Back in October and November of 2024, I had the privilege of playing one of the best video game experiences that I've played in years, Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. After playing these two games, it really cemented the idea in my brain that video game stories can easily be just as good as any story written for a book, movie, or TV show. I mean, seriously, the story was so good in my opinion that Remake and Rebirth have entered into my personal top 20 games that I've ever played. I won't say too much about these two games because I've already made a whole video about these, so if you wish to see that, I'll leave a link in the description. With that being said, it made me interested in the other Final Fantasy games, and my logic was that since Final Fantasy VII had such a great, epic, sweeping story, surely the other games have to be epic stories too. So naturally, the next stage of progression after 7 is 8. Now, I knew almost nothing about Final Fantasy VIII going into my playthrough. The only thing I knew about the game is the main character, Squall, and something else which I'll talk about later. I'm going to have a spoiler section of this video later on and towards the end of the video, so don't worry about me talking about the story as far as spoilers right now. I'll keep it light if you wish to play this game in the future. Overall, I liked it. I thought the story felt very grand and epic, and it feels like a true adventure across the world of Final Fantasy VIII. If you like big, globe-trotting adventures, I definitely think Final Fantasy VIII is very strong in that department. Now, I'll be honest, and this is a spoiler warning, so I'll leave a timestamp you can skip to bypass this whole section I'm about to talk about. So I'll give you a second. Okay? Alright, here we go. They go to space! When I realized this was happening, I was thinking to myself, huh? Okay, this is weird. Not bad weird, but just weird. I was like, oh, okay, we're doing this now, I guess. Obviously, there is a reason for them to go there. I'm not saying there wasn't. I just thought the fact that the whole game up to that point was pretty grounded in the world, and then they're suddenly going to space, I was like, wait, what? Again, not bad. Just an interesting decision to have that part of the game in space. But to switch gears now, some of my favorite parts of the game are, for example, the lead up to the assassination attempt of Sorceress Edea in Deling City, which by the way has an excellent soundtrack and build up. The scene of Squall and Rinoa in the spaceship, the desert prison escape sequence, and Esthar is especially a big highlight for me. I think it looks so freaking cool and futuristic, and it has that neo-futuristic, dare I say, Frutiger Arrow look to it. Hi, Editor Dan here. One of the things that I forgot to mention about the story is one of my favorite scenes, and probably my favorite scene in the entire game, is the scene where Balam Garden literally turns into a flying ship, and there's just this magical quality to the whole sequence, and it feels like a freaking fairy tale. It's awesome. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the ending. I don't know what the consensus is on the ending of the game, but I personally liked it. And I'll be honest, I was kinda scared they were about to have Squall stay at Edea's house with the whole time compression thing. So the entire time watching the ending, I was kinda scared and I felt like my judgment was clouded because that's what I was thinking about the entire time. But thankfully, they didn't do that, so I was relieved. But after watching the ending again, I really liked the ending cutscene with everyone interacting and celebrating, while also implying that Squall survived the time compression and found Rinoa. So overall, I enjoyed the story, and I thought the ending was pretty satisfying. Now, the characters. I want to highlight some of the characters of Final Fantasy VIII because I think they're really fun. I was surprised by how well a game with no audible dialogue is able to convey the characters' personalities and emotions so well. Starting with our main character, Squall. Squall starts out as this very cold, loner, almost antisocial type who is kinda unlikable in the beginning, but that's on purpose. We, the gamer behind the screen, aren't supposed to like him at first, in my opinion, because as the game progresses with the different events and interactions with other characters that take place, Squall turns from this very cold guy to someone who is very thankful for his friends and open to help from other people around him, and I think is really well done. Renoa is the leader of a resistance group and is the love interest for Squall throughout the game. I really like how, because of them being polar opposite people, they are able to have very dynamic and interesting interactions. She helps Squall realize that he doesn't need to suppress and hide all of his emotions around herself and his friends, and because of this, Squall is able to have strong character development throughout the game, thanks to her. Also, side note, whenever it's just them two on screen, I literally do one of these. Also, props to Zell and Selphie throughout the game. Zell is one of Squall's closest friends and is this super energetic, can-do attitude kind of guy who, in my opinion, is probably the most easily likable character in the whole game. Same with Selphie, who is also one of Squall's closest friends, who has this very bright, cheery, optimistic personality who is willing to do anything to help and defend her friends and home. Overall, all the characters, even the ones who I haven't mentioned, are so full of life and lend a lot of color to the world. Now, unlike the two Final Fantasy VII Remake games, Final Fantasy VIII is an old game. It originally came out in 1999 for the PlayStation 1, and as of July 2025, while I'm recording this, there is no sign of there being a remake for Final Fantasy VIII in the near future. So, I was stuck with the original. Technically, I played the remastered version, but for all intents and purposes, it is the original game. Now, I'll admit, the graphics are very dated, which isn't a surprise. The game is from the turn of the century, 1999. However, as someone who doesn't mind dated graphics and who at the age of 10 played the original Half-Life on my dad's PC and absolutely loved it, I actually think the game looks really cool, even in 2025. The art style and the whole general aesthetic of the game has this very neo-futuristic realism look. Places like Esthar and Balam Garden are the best examples. I think they look amazing and kind of ethereal, almost like places that shouldn't exist, but they do in the world of Final Fantasy VIII. Other places like Delling City and Dale, I don't know how you say it, are closer to a rustic look while still feeling futuristic. I actually love the way certain areas look in the game, and there is a charm to the turn of the century graphics that I can appreciate. Even the CGI cutscenes, which feature all of the characters rendered in full 3D, I actually kind of dig, and I think it gives the game a distinct look. Alright, now comes the biggest point of contention in the whole video, and the one sore thumb about FF8 that I have to say is the gameplay and the combat mechanics. Now, before you guys start getting your pitchforks out and start giving the video a million dislikes and start commenting, what do you mean you didn't like the gameplay? That's like 50% of the game right there. What do you mean, blah, 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 all that stuff. Just let me explain myself for a second, and I'll tell you why I didn't really like the gameplay. As a young, budding gamer in the 2000s and early 2010s, I never played a single game that was turn-based combat or just really any turn-based game at all. It was all first-person shooters and real-time combat and all that stuff. So, I never really got used to turn-based combat, and I gotta admit, even now, and while I was playing Final Fantasy VIII, I just thought the turn-based combat was really slow, and I'm much more of a real-time combat guy. I like to be kind of in the fight, moving around constantly, doing quick actions and stuff like that. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute. If you knew going into it that it was turn-based, why did you play it in the first place? Why did you even go near this game? Well, like I said at the beginning of the video, I was interested in the story, and in my brain, I thought that the story would be so good that it would override my ineptitude with turn-based combat, and it was right. I finished the whole game, and even though I didn't like the combat at all and the gameplay mechanics, I still chugged through because I wanted to, experience the story. So even though I'm not, I'm in the minority here who don't like the gameplay, and I'm not really just a big turn-based guy anyways, even though I didn't like the gameplay, I still have to preface that I did really like the game overall because the story I really, really enjoyed, and the environment and basically everything that wasn't the gameplay I really liked. So even though, I didn't maybe dig the gameplay that much, everything else was pretty awesome. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is the soundtrack. Now, I think the soundtrack, much like every other Final Fantasy game, and in fact, much like every other Square Enix game, is absolutely ace. Some of my favorite tracks include the opening theme, Liberi Fatali. The Balam Garden theme I can see myself hearing again years down the line and having a Ratatouille moment, if you know what I mean. One of the more underappreciated tracks I dig is Only a Plank Between One and Perdition, which is a really long title, but it's an awesome, funky, string-led action track that really lends itself well to any of the intense, kind of action-packed moments in the game. So there you have it, that was my experience with Final Fantasy VIII. Now, what did I think about it in summary? Well, overall, I really liked it. I think pretty much everything from the characters to the environments to the story was really compelling and interesting and absolutely a lot of fun to play. Even though the gameplay I didn't really like at all because, like I said, I'm not really a big turn-based combat guy, but everything else I really liked. But I want to hear from you, the viewer. What do you think of Final Fantasy VIII? What are your memories of playing it? Did you play it when it released all the way back in 1999? Or did you play it later on? And do you think they should make a remake for Final Fantasy VIII? Because me personally, I would love if they did that. I definitely think that a game like Final Fantasy VIII with modern gameplay and stuff like that would be absolutely tremendous for me personally. So thank you everybody very much for watching. Please let me know what you thought. And I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.